Hey, what up, guys? My name is Yuki Murai. I'm an energy healer, a transformational coach, and I help you heal in mind, body, spirit. So let's talk about dopamine today. Dopamine. So we live in an age of instant gratification, hyperstimulation, and I call it the DoorDash and TikTok generation, where at a click of a button, the food is at the door. Our attention spans have shrunk so far minimally that the average attention span is about 7 to 8 seconds, science is showing. So basically, if you're watching long form content like this, your brain is becoming very, very impatient, right? And it just wants to start scrolling on TikTok and get quick sound bites of information, right? It's because we trained our brain into operating from that system and the functioning of quicker is better, right now, or it's not worth it, right? And that's where the instant gratification comes in. And dopamine plays a critical part of this. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that's linked to many different functions, but at the core of it, it's linked to our motivation, right? To get up and go do things, to get up and go find food, to get up and go find a mate. It helps us, direct us to get our basic survival needs met. And it's a ancient wiring in our brain that rewards us when we act in our highest accordance and good, or when we achieve something, right? But the last part, it doesn't always have to be in the highest accordance or our good, but we can trick our brains into thinking it is. An example of that will be porn, right? When you're watching porn, your dopamine receptors are firing, and you're flooding your brain and your nervous system and your body with dopamine, right? And your brain actually thinks that you're here with that person on the screen, experiencing what's going on, right? So over time, what that does is it desensitizes the receptors in your brain that produce and channel dopamine into the system, right? So how is that an issue, you might ask? So this is just one example, right, of porn. But if you continue to watch that hypernormal stimuli, what happens as a result is normal connection with other human beings that you are attracted to becomes more dull, less pleasant, and you start to compare yourself and that interaction and the relationship with what you're watching on the screen, right? And your brain gets tricked into thinking what's on the screen is more pleasurable than what the person in front of you, right? You can see how that could have a cascade of negative effects on our physiology, on our perception, and how we experience life. I hope this is landing so far, okay? Dopamine is very important. And a lot of people are talking about dopamine detoxes, right? And that's all fine and dandy. But this is not something that you can just detox from and then go back to your normal way of living after, right? It's not like a 30-day cleanse, a juice fast to cleanse out your internal chemistry, and then you start eating cheeseburgers and fries and chocolate cake every day again, right? So it's really not an on and off switch like that. It's not where you detox for 30 days, you live well for 30 days, and then you can go back to your normal way of living, right? These are patterns, habitual patterns that are installed in your neurochemistry. Not to say that you can't change, but oftentimes it takes a little bit longer, a little bit more consistency, a little bit more refrain and impulse control, and living that way for a prolonged period of time so that you really restore the chemistry of dopamine in your brain, right? And I hope the sound is going through well, because It's raining pretty hard here in Southern California. You hear the thunder, it's going off. Happens about 10 times the entire year. So God is showering us with his tears right now. So it's a good thing. But hope you guys can hear well. But what I was saying is that dopamine is the master regulator of motivation, right? So if you continue to fry those receptor sites through instant gratification and instant pleasure seeking, right? Quick hits of pleasure without having to work for it, right? And now what's happening is that not only are you frying your dopamine receptors, right? So you have less motivation. You have less motivation to go after the things that you want, right? And when you do go after those things, it's less pleasurable. So you have less motivation. So you see how it's a double whammy. It's a domino effect, right? First, you fry the receptors. So the neurochemistry, right? And the neurotransmitter and the biochemistry is getting fried, right? So you're hitting it from the physical end. And now you're hitting it from the emotional end because you're getting less pleasurable emotions, right? Joy, fulfillment, right? Peace, right? And earned pleasure. And as a result, with those two combined, you can see how people can get in a rut, right? No hope, no fulfillment, no joy for life, no motivation to keep moving forward. And then they end up settling for whatever life offers them, and they become a victim of creation instead of a master of their creation, right? So, for me, I was hooked in the instant pleasure loop for years and years, right? Let me give you a story. So, I used to be heavy into partying, right? I loved going to house parties. I loved going to, EDM shows. I loved going to raves. And ever since I could remember, from the age around 12, the pleasure, the instant gratification, the avoidance of emotions, the avoidance of life reared its ugly head, right? I started smoking weed at a young age. I started smoking weed at 12 years old. And then I started drinking alcohol shortly after that, around 13, 14, right? And ultimately, I was avoiding my life. I was avoiding my environment. I was avoiding my situation, right? And I was avoiding my feelings. I would constantly run away from myself and seek these external instant pleasures and gratifications in order to numb myself, right? I felt better in the moment. I felt relieved. But ultimately, in the long run, I was paying for it, right? I can guarantee you I'll be way farther in life if I didn't indulge in all of those, right? And this has a cascading effect on every aspect of your life, right? So my situation, when I started to smoke the weed, right? What does the weed do? I'm running away from myself. I'm numbing myself, right? So I'm feeling good in the moment, but I'm also suppressing my emotions, my authentic emotions that are coming up because I'm numbing myself. And I'm building a pattern within myself to run away from my problems, to run away from myself, and to seek that instant gratification in order to get me out of the pain in the moment, right? So I'm training my brain, my body, and my nervous system, and my spirit that what is here at the moment is too much to handle. So I'm going to do this activity. For me at the time, it was weed, right? Along with many other substances. I'm not going to get into all of that in this video. But weed was my first substance that I ever used. So I'm going to talk to you. And I know that a lot of people indulge in it and struggle with it on a daily basis, right? So back to what I was saying. I was training my brain that what's happening now is too overwhelming. So I'm going to do this activity to take this pain away in the moment, right? So, and there's instant corrective feedback when you do something. That's why I have deep compassion for people that struggle with any kind of substance, right? Whether it may be anything from caffeine, weed, and all the way up the spectrum to alcohol, to ecstasy, to Xanax, to meth, to cocaine, all of it, right? Because the return on investment, or the ROI, is incredibly massive. I'm talking about massive in the moment, right? Because you get instant feedback and instant correction, right? So I take a puff of the blunt or out of the bong, and instantly my state is shifted. And instantly I'm taken out of whatever I was afraid to face in the moment, right? So now you're getting instant corrective feedback, and it's depending on how you look at it, a positive feedback loop or a negative feedback loop. In my case, it was a negative feedback loop, right? Because now I was training my brain that I cannot handle what's within me and around me. And now this external substance is what's going to take me out of my internal misery in the moment, right? And now that I'm getting the corrective feedback through the flooding of dopamine and other neurotransmitters, right? And instantly feeling the shift in my body, like, weight off my shoulders. I can breathe again, right? But we can only distract ourselves for so long until it eventually catches up to us, right? And here's the thing with instant gratification. Right now we're talking about substances and weed and porn, lust, too much sex without connection, right? For some people, it's overworking, right? To run away from their problems. For other people, it may be gambling, it may be video games, it may be, numbing TV, right? Scrolling on social media. All of these are firing the dopamine, the supernormal stimuli, right? And eventually, not only does our brain get fried, but we are wiring the chemistry and the pattern of distraction and fleeing, right, from what is here now. So, in my case, I was numbing myself with the weed, right? So I would smoke and I would feel really good. It would take me away from my pain for that moment. I was training myself. Okay, I can't handle my emotions. I can't handle my life. So I'm going to run to this plant and this external substance to get away from it, right? So now I'm training my nervous system to numb out, and that feeling of the weed is getting wired into my nervous system, and then the flooding of dopamine is reinforcing it, right? So the pattern of running away and fleeing, and the pattern of numbing and feeling good, that combined with the lack of delayed gratification and instant pleasure seeking. And then that ended up trickling into every aspect of my life, right? And it took years to rewire that pattern. And I'm still working on it. I still fall into it. I'm not perfect, guys. I'm a messy human being just like you. So I'm not above any of you, right? I still catch myself binge eating sometimes when I don't want to sit with my shit. I still catch myself watching mindless shit on YouTube or TV, right? I will have a drink from time to time, right? And I still will indulge from time to time, but now I'm able to observe the pattern, right? And I'm able to disidentify and create space between that pattern. And as a result of me creating that space and that awareness, now I'm able to shift it and I come out of that funk a lot quicker, right? So the first step is noticing the pattern, right? Noticing, how am I running away from my life? How am I running away from my emotions? How am I running away from myself? And what am I doing in the moment? And what are my vices? I don't even like to call it vices, but what are my emotional comfort buddies, right? My emotional regulation tool in the moment that may not be serving me in the long run, right? So for me, in that moment, it was weed. In other moments, it was binge eating. It was alcohol. It was Xanax. It was ecstasy. It was cocaine, it was porn, it was lust and too much sex, right? So I've been through the gamut, guys, and most of my life I was running from myself. Most of my life I was distracting and hiding from myself, because the greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. The greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure, right? And then that power that's stored within us, the light and the darkness, because we are a whole human. We're not just light, we're not just dark. So that storehouse of energy within us is what terrifies us the most, right? And when it starts to come up and come to the surface, we will do whatever we can to suppress it, run from it, distract from it. And it's human nature, because we were never taught how to properly deal with these emotions and these energies, right? We're taught to distract, numb ourselves, right? Numb ourselves through pharmaceutical medications, numb ourselves through alcohol, through weed, through substances, through overworking and achieving, through sex, promiscuity, and lust, right? It's all over the media. It's everywhere. The celebrities are pushing it. Everybody's pushing it, right? Luckily, people are waking up, and now we're becoming a little bit more conscious of our patterns, and we're in the consciousness, we're able to shift it. But chances are, everybody that you know, or someone that you know in your life, most people are probably operating from that frame of distraction, instant pleasure seeking, and numbing, right? And it's no fault to our own. It's not, right? The most courageous thing we could do is to face ourselves and to face our shadow, as Carl Jung liked to call it, right? The energies within us, along with the light, and to be able to surface that, process it, and move it through, so that now we become a master of our bodies, our minds, and our spirits, and as a result become a master of our lives, right? So let's go back to dopamine. I hope this is making sense and landing, right? Sometimes I go off on tangents, but I try to always relay it back to the original concept, because dopamine is what gets flooded when we distract, when we numb, when we go through the instant gratification, right? So the instant feedback is what's training our body to get addicted to the chemistry, the flooding of the dopamine, the high that we get, and the instant relief that we get, right? When we eat the shitty food, when we smoke the weed, when we drink the alcohol, when we do the porn, right? Whatever your vice is in the moment, right? It's teaching the brain and the body that my power is not within me and it's outside. And I need this thing outside of me in order for me to feel better and come back to regulation, right? And we end up never developing the agency within ourselves to be able to regulate our emotions, to be able to regulate our state, to be able to shift our mind and our body from the inside out, right? And then that victimhood translates to everything outside of us. Now we're looking to the doctors to heal us. Now we're looking for the intimate partner to take away all of our insecurities, our voids, and our pain inside. Now we're looking to our parents through the codependency to save us. And we continue to perpetuate staying in the little boy or little girl inside. And we never become individualized, as Carl Jung would say. And we never end up taking our agency. And we never end up growing up out of that infancy as a result of our habits, patterns, and our neurochemistry, right? So dopamine is a very, very powerful neurotransmitter, and it's showing up everywhere in the modern world. If you live anything remotely in a Western society, right, which is most of the world, by the way, unless you're living in a homestead, off-grid, in the countryside, raising your own animals, living in accordance to nature, with your feet on the ground, picking your own berries, planting your own vegetables, fruits, milking your cows, right? Butchering your own animals, living off of the land, off of these devices, right? Not constantly connected, right? Then chances are, if you're like me, you're living in this system. And how can we become a little bit more balanced, a little bit more harmonized, a little bit more coherent, and a little bit more discerning in this modern society that we live in? Because there's a lot of perks and benefits, right? This is not all bad. Like, I'm able to communicate with you through this screen and this device, wherever you are around the world. That's magnificent. That's amazing. And there could be two opposites, right? There could always be a dialectic. Two sides of the same coin I always talk about. And it could be our greatest downfall, right? So how long are we scrolling through social media throughout the day, right? To numb ourselves. How often are we numbing ourselves through substances, right? How often are we numbing ourselves through sex and promiscuity and lust? How often are we numbing ourselves through overeating, right? How often are we numbing ourselves through mindless television? And I don't like putting labels on things, guys. So none of this is bad. They serve a time and place at certain times. But there's a difference between a ritual, right, and an occasional fling. Meaning, a ritual is something that you do deliberately, consistently, over time, and is ingrained in your neurology, your personality, and your daily routine, right? It almost becomes you, because your daily routine is usually fixed, right? You get up, you shower, you brush your teeth with the same toothpaste, you go into the shower, you brush off, you put your clothes on in front of that same mirror, and then you get into your car, you drive to work in the same route, right? You talk to the same people, right? You finish work, you get off of work, you come back, you eat your lunch, you eat your dinner, and then there's your ritual, right? And it may be in the morning, it may be in the afternoon, it may be at night for you, right? But it becomes ingrained in your personality, your neurology, and your personality, and that's what becomes a ritual, right? So there's nothing wrong with having an occasional fling, right? Maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, whatever the rhythm is for you. But you see how in that case, it's not a ritual. It's not something that you have to do in order to feel okay, right? There's a big difference there. Because we all need to distract and numb sometimes, right? Life gets overwhelming and there's nothing wrong with that. But if that becomes the majority, and every time you feel something uncomfortable, or something is going wrong at work, or something is going wrong in your intimate relationship, or you have uncomfortable emotions that come up, if your immediate response is to numb it and run from it and do something to take it away, then now you're losing your agency. Now we're starting to lose our power, and now we're starting to lose our free will to our program, right? And then the dopamine is highly addictive. It's trained so that it gives us feedback, so that we can remember the pleasurable feeling, so that we continue to go towards our goal and survive ultimately, right? So in ancient times, where we couldn't go to the grocery store and instantly get our food, when we couldn't get our food delivered in a dime of a click to our door, when we couldn't swipe on a dating app and have a person over that night to fulfill our sexual needs. You see where I'm going here? When we didn't have access to the instant pleasure, and instant gratification that we have in modern society, we actually had to work for things, right? Not saying we don't have to work now. Like, you got to get on your app, you got to click the DoorDash app, you got to scroll through using those damn finger muscles to find the meal that we want, click on it, and maybe even pay for it a little bit with our credit cards. And then the food just shows up. Yes, I know. We've come so far that is our title and our label for effort now. Scrolling through our app, using the mind power to choose between all those delicious options. And now, that is our effort, right? But our ancestors would have laughed at us. Truly. They would have been baffled. And they would have just been rolling on the floor laughing. Like, wow, kid, you have it this easy and you're still not grateful, right? Hey, I'm in the same camp. I ordered from DoorDash like a week ago. I get it, right? But I try not to do it every fucking night, right? Multiple times a week. So every once in a while, when I'm feeling a little lazy, I don't want to cook, I'll use that commodity and that convenience. And it's brilliant that we have that, right? And our ancient wiring in our brain, right? And we are not that evolved, even if we think we are, right? Than we were as our ancestors thousands of years ago. So back to our ancestors. They would have had to either been tracking on their feet all day in order to find some prey and kill the prey with their hands, a bow or a stick or whatever. They would have had to drag that heavy animal to whatever campsite, right? They had to skin the animal, clean the animal. They had to butcher the animal, right? They had to get their hands dirty, right? They had to get into the nitty-gritty. They had to cut the animal into pieces and then prepare the food in whatever format and then store the food underground. And then finally, after hours and hours of work, they have that one beautiful meal. And you see how dopamine in that sense is doing its purpose. You hunted all day, you did all the dirty work, you delayed you went towards what you needed and got the food. And as a result, dopamine fires to reinforce that pattern, like, hey, this is a good thing. You went out, you hunted, you got us food. So now I'm gonna reward you with this feel-good chemistry so that you can reinforce this pattern so that you can continue to help us survive by getting us food, right? So you see how when we're going towards what we want without instant gratification, now dopamine serves a purpose. But when we constantly fry our dopamine receptors throughout the day with little hits that seem inconsequential in the moment, right? The 30 minutes of scrolling through TikTok. Oh, what's the harm? I'm just laughing, I'm having a good time. I'm just laughing and having a good time, right? Yes, and there's a time and place for that, right? And then you go to the 2 drinks of alcohol after work with your friends, social gathering, nothing wrong with that at times, right? And then you go home, right? You turn on your favorite TV show on Netflix and you just tune out, eating your Twinkies and then your chocolate ice cream with the donuts and the potato chips, right? All of those are firing your dopamine receptors unnaturally. And then, in order to wind down, what do we do? Have another drink, smoke the blunt, right? Or whatever. Take the pharmaceutical sleeping pill. That's firing our dopamine receptors, right? So you see, all throughout the day in our modern world, our hyper-stimulated modern world, which is very unnatural for our evolutionarily ancient brains, right? So over the day, over the weeks, as we continue to fry those dopamine receptors, you can see how we don't have the motivation now to go build the business, to go communicate with whoever we feel attracted to when we see them in wherever we are. Or we don't have the ability to sit with difficult emotions because we don't have time for it, or it's too uncomfortable, right? And normal everyday things are not as pleasurable anymore because your brain is like, okay, you're feeding me all day, I'm good, right? Seems like we're good, right? I'm doing my job, we're good. And your brain will always choose your survival and safety over your fulfilled, beautiful, expansive life, right? Your brain would always rather have you be comfortable and safe than uncomfortable and building something great, right? So I hit a lot of different points there, but you see how everything is connecting, right? And there's something in your brain called, I don't know if there's actually a term for it, but read the book Dopamine Nation, okay? Incredible book. And the doctor there, I'm blanking out on her name right now. Yeah, man. Just watching her video the other day. I'm blanking out on her name. But the book is Dopamine Nation, right? And what she talks about, she's a neuroscientist, right? So she's studying this from the inside out through physiology, biochemistry, right? So this is not no woo-woo concept I'm going, okay? So your brain, there's pain centers and pleasure centers in the brain. And through her research, what she found is that it works like a seesaw, okay? And the more you tilt towards pleasure, right? What do you think happens to the pain? Right? Pleasure, and then the pain rises. Like a seesaw. When one side pushes down, another side rises, right? So our brain similarly works in this fashion. And she calls it gremlin, right? Little gremlin. These pain gremlins that come out when you're far too in the pleasure zone. So if you've ever had, let's say you watch some porn, you're having a good old time watching some stimulating content, right? And then you release sexually and you feel good. You feel good in the moment. Maybe you feel good for even hours after, right? And then what happens after, right? If not immediately, hours after usually comes with a dip or a crash, right? Comes with malaise, a little bit of a drain in your energy, lack of focus, maybe you might feel a little weak in the body, right? So this is the reinforcement pattern in your brain. Hypernormal pleasure stimuli, and now the pain rises so that your brain balances out, right? Because your brain understands ancestrally, evolutionarily, that instant gratification and too much pleasure does not usually equal to the survival, maintenance, and evolution of the organism, right? Like the last example I gave of you having to go on your feet all day and hunt that animal down and butcher it and bring it back to the tribe and eat it and cook it, blah, blah, blah. Usually that's not a real fun experience, right? And your brain understands that, right? And it understands that instant gratification in the long run is not going to be best for the survival and thrival of the species, right? Because usually something in nature that is worthwhile, that is good for the evolution and the continuation of the species, the brain understands that we must usually work for it, right? We need to put in some pain and sweat in order to get something, right? So our brain is incredibly intelligent in that if we're constantly going towards instant pleasure and dopamine seeking, then it's going to correct us with an equal amount of pain to remind us, hey, something's a little off here. Let's come back to balance, right? I want us to continue to survive and continue our species down our bloodline, right? And our innate intelligence understands this. And as a result, you did the line of cocaine. You had a blast with the night out, with all the women, with all the men, right? Gratifying those pleasures. Your dopamine was firing through the system. Pleasure was running through the bloodstream. What happens the day after? That comes the crash, the hangover, right? Now you feel even shittier than when you began, right? So there was a high, super normal high, and then as a result, a super normal dip, right? And then eventually through time, your brain slowly starts to find balance again. But that may take 1, 2, 3, maybe even a week for some people, depending on how far you went, right? So our brains, our biochemistry, our physiology, our ancient intelligence in our body is constantly correcting us and constantly communicating to us that, hey, we might be a little bit out of balance here, right? And also our soul and our spirit knows and wants us to stay present with whatever is coming up. All our bodies and our emotions are trying to do is trying to communicate with us and give us wisdom, right? So that we can live our most fulfilled, authentic, purposeful, joyful life, right? But when we suppress that continuously and push it down, right? It comes out sideways in a myriad of ways. It may come out in passive aggressiveness with your partner. It may come out as a physical or mental health condition, chronic, right? It may come out as panic attacks. It may come out as a block in your business because you can't think clearly and you're not present and your energy is not flowing and you're not able to receive your manifestations and desires. It may come out as autoimmune conditions, skin conditions, right? Hormonal imbalance. It may come out as unnecessary anger or rage, right? So you can see how the suppressed energy within you is somehow gonna find its way out, right? It's like when you're washing your dishes and your partner just says something and just fucking triggers you to the fullest. And it wasn't what they said. And then you end up blowing up on them, right? Maybe you break the dish or you scream at them, yell at them, when really you didn't mean that. And it had really nothing to do with what they said. Maybe it triggered you a little bit, but it was all that suppressed energy within that blasted out because it could only be suppressed, distracted, and numb for so long, right? So dopamine is a powerful catalyst and a powerful foe and partner that's trying to help us, trying to guide us, right? And it's reinforcing that through the pleasure that we feel in our bodies, right? But can we begin to use it to our advantage, right? And to be cognizant of how much we're clicking that button, you know? Not to say your body's just a machine and it's just like, you know, a car, and we're a lot more complex and a lot more highly developed and organized than that. But speaking from biochemistry, neurologically, right, this is what happens. Can we be more sparing with how often we spark that dopamine in our brain so that we can come back to balance, so that longer tasks and more quote-unquote boring tasks that may take some effort but ultimately are getting you to that end goal becomes more joyful, becomes more fulfilling, you're able to become more present. You're able to enjoy the things that are in your life on a daily basis a lot more. That simple conversation you're having with a friend. Now you don't have to scroll through your phone because you're distracted and it's too boring, right? It's going over your head. Now you can be present with your friend. Now you can actually enjoy, and that conversation becomes the fuel and the nourishment. Now we don't have to constantly scroll through our phones all day, all night, because we're trying to numb and distract, and we just want that spike, right? Now we're able to watch that TV show and actually stay present and enjoy it when we periodically do it. And it's not a form of escape, but a form of actual fulfillment and joy in the moment, right? Now we're able to be purposeful because our brain is back online. And now we've rewired those pathways, restored our dopamine receptors. So now we have the motivation to go towards that partner that we want to call in, right? That business that we want to build, that the social circle with the aligned human beings that we'd like to be around. Now we have the motivation, the courage, the desire, and the alignment to be able to go towards it, right? We have the brain fuel, right? So dopamine is crucial for all of us, especially in this modern, chaotic, overstimulated world that we're in, right? And we all fall victim and prey to it. I'm no better than you. I catch myself all the time, like, oh, there's the pattern. I'm distracting again, I'm numbing again, right? But because I teach this work, and because I work closely with my clients, friends, people, and most importantly myself, by non-judgmentally observing myself with space, so that I observe my patterns, I observe my clients' patterns, and see what's actually holding me back and holding them back, right? And a lot of times it's nothing astronomical. It's pretty simple usually, right? It's the patterns, habits, behaviors, beliefs, thought patterns, and the things that they're running away from, that if they were to surrender to and just open and let it flow through, then a lot of their problems just dissolve naturally, right? Because the charge and the energy that's built within, that we're afraid to face and let flow through, that's the stuck energy that's altering your frequency and vibration, right? The more suppressed emotions, suppressed energies that we have within us that we're afraid to face, the more it's going to come out sideways in different aspects of our life. Because you can fake your personality, you can fake your persona, you can fake your demeanor in life, but you can never fake your frequency and energy, right? People can see right through it, right? And that's the energy within you. And if you are able to sit with it and allow it to move through, the trauma releases, the suppressed emotion releases, now there's space for you to create. And now in that space, you're freeing yourself from the programs that have been installed by usually your parents, society, people around you. And now you can become an authentic, sovereign being. And now you don't have to run away from your problems and numb yourselves every time something uncomfortable comes up. Now you have the agency, you have the skills, the tools, and most of all, you have the belief that I can handle, process, and regulate myself no matter what state I'm in, no matter what's going on out there, no matter what's going on within. Now I have the courage, faith, and the skill sets and frameworks to move through it. And now you're able to apply that to every aspect of your life, right? And you're coming from a place of agency, free will, and choice, rather than impulse, reactivity, and victim consciousness, right? And it starts with dopamine, along with many other things. But this is a huge thing that I see both in my clients, society in general, and within myself, because I'm no better, right? I just teach this, I reflect on it, and I study this. So now I'm a little bit more reflective and aware. And as a result of the awareness, I'm able to shift and change my habits as well. But I'm no better. I come back to those patterns, those vices, those distractions. I see myself numbing myself. But now, as long as my presence, my compassion, and my courage to be with the uncomfortable and to face it head on outweighs my distraction and numbing, then that's a victory for me, you know? Because I never want to portray myself as perfection, or I never want any of you to think that you need to be perfect, right? Because part of life is polarity and duality, right? So without being able to numb and distract at times, we would not know presence, love, compassion, and courage, right? Without the shadow, we would not know the light, right? In religious terms, what would it be? Without hell, we would not know heaven, right? Everything is a polarity and duality, right? The masculine, the feminine, yin and yang, right? North, south, east, west, right? So in this case, can we start to shift from the concept of numbing, distracting, instant pleasure, slowly steering the ship towards presence, delayed gratification, compassion, and courage to face our stuff head on and be with it. And that's where you take your power back, brothers and sisters. Okay? So I hope this video helps you. I hope this video lands. And maybe in a future video, I will go over some tangible things that you can do. But I gave you some references, some examples, so that you can start to become aware of this concept and how you may be running from your life, distracting or numbing through the stimulation of dopamine and instant gratification in your life. And just that awareness will begin to shift the patterns, right? Because the first step to any change is acceptance of the pattern, awareness of the pattern, right? And you can't become aware without accepting. And you can't accept without becoming aware, right? So those two go hand in hand. So by you watching this video and becoming aware of your patterns, naturally your higher self and your soul, the intelligence within you, will start directing you towards what is the highest of you and your entire bloodline, your entire ancestry, and your entire community, and the entire world as a result. Love you guys. Become aware of the patterns. Accept yourself fully for where you're at in the moment. And then start to shift your life from the inside out in mind, body, and soul. Till next time, my name is Yuki Mirai, and I'm out. Comment down below if this video helps you in any way, shape, or form. If you'd like to connect with me and go deeper into this work of refining mind, body, and soul and healing from the inside out, you can go ahead and email me in the description box below, or DM me on Instagram at heal_with_Yuki. That will be linked down below as well. And if you just like to give me feedback or connect, even if you don't want to work professionally, I'm all here for it. I want to hear from you guys, okay? And if you want me to touch on any other aspects that you're struggling with, any blocks that you have in your life, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, business, relationally, whatever, okay? I'm here for you, and to the best of my knowledge within the field of my understanding in the present moment, I will come up with something for you to assist you, okay? Love you guys. Till next time. Peace.